All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I think we'll still have a couple people popping in, but hello, my name is Nikki Tusher. I'm the Director of Training and Get Outdoors today with PRPS. Thank you for joining us for our Community Center Roundtable. This is the first roundtable we've done for community centers. It was a request that we've had, and I think it's a great suggestion. Lauren, I am not going to say your last name. I will let you introduce yourself because I have a last name that tends to be said wrong and I don't want to say it wrong. But Lauren has graciously offered to kind of help be one of our leaders on today's call because she runs a community center, and I know we have a wide variety of community center sizes. So we're really looking for a lot of feedback so we can know what people are doing, what questions do we have. And with that said, I know an email came out through PRPS yesterday. We have a webinar coming up next Friday with the Department of Health. So if there are specific questions that come up today during this roundtable, I will jot them down and make sure that we compile them with our list of questions for DOH and see if we can get some of those answered. Please feel free to either raise your hand to respond or ask questions in the chat box. We do have a group of about 41 people, so we'll be able to have a good conversation, I think. So again, you can either speak out loud or use the chat box. And Lauren, I'm going to throw it over to you to introduce yourself, and we can kind of get the ball rolling. Oh, you're still muted. There you go.
Realize that. Hi, everyone. My name's Lauren Irizarry. I'm the Director of Recreation for Conshohocken Borough, and I run the community center in Conshohocken. It's a smaller setting, so I might not have the same issues as some of you, Dan at Upper Merion or Karen in Plymouth, but I'd still like to hear all of your suggestions. So we are working on some things borough-wide, and I do have some things to go off of. Which I did provide to Nikki, and she'll send out some of those documents just in case you or your municipality is interested. These were documents that were sent out by our borough manager. So I do have some stuff to go off of, but I'm interested in hearing what everyone else is doing as far as some of these issues that Nikki and I had discussed prior to this call this morning. So right now, I'm going to tell you right now what our plan is. And again, this could change. It changes weekly. Some things could change daily, as I'm sure all of you know. We are planning on opening the community center. We have our own phases, just like the governor, you know, they came out with their phases as well. So right now, we are the third phase in our borough, and our plan is to be open by June 8th, if we meet the requirements. We are talking about only the community center only being open for summer camp, though. So I'm curious to know what everyone else is doing. We will not operate on normal business hours. We'll be closed on the weekends. And again, this is just preliminary talks. Depending on what happens, these things could change. Does anyone else have a plan right now?
Reminder to unmute yourself if you do have a plan and want to speak up about it. If you put it in the chat box, I can make sure to bring it up. If you have a problem unmuting yourself, you can raise your hand and we will make sure to assist you with unmuting.
Hey, this is Tyler from the Township of Upper St. Clair. So I work for our Community and Recreation Center. We're one of the larger recreation centers in southwestern PA. We serve a couple thousand people, depending on what the day looks like, and if we have a lot of daily admissions. And we're also surrounded kind of in a very large park, Boyce Park. So really where we are is we've been trying to focus our reopening strategy in phases as well. But we're actually going by departments because we have very large departments. Aquatics, we're looking at that separately. And we've been trying to kind of put it all together and what that means for our membership base. If we reopen, will we just have members and only be open to residents for a day pass? Will we have, because we are a membership-based facility, so we're kind of looking at some of those options now, having extra staffing for cleaning procedures, but we're really waiting to see what the state guidance is going to be on how many people are we allowed to even bring into a building at one time. We've definitely recognized we're at the green phase, but we hope to be able to reopen some of our parks and things around, in our surrounding parks to be able to, kind of ease the burden before we have to open our facility. But we're kind of hoping once we get in the green phase, we would need about 2 weeks to get everything in place to officially reopen.
Anyone else? Have you even discussed a plan yet, or are you still looking for further guidance from the state?
We offer a summer camp. That's our problem. And we're trying to think how we can incorporate that with our members. We would do away with our day passes. We've already decided until further notice. We're thinking of opening just for our summer camp. And then when summer camp was over at 6 o'clock, opening for our members till 9, because we're usually open till 9:30.
Greg,
So
where
we're
are you
thinking
from?
of that. Kingston, Pennsylvania, up by Wilkes-Barre. Big rec center, gymnasiums, racquetball courts, weight rooms.
We have a couple people that's saying they're waiting for further guidance from the state, brainstorming ideas for post-pandemic events and activities. That's in Montgomery Township and MARA Recreation. I should know what it is, but I don't. So if you can tell me who you are.
Hey guys, this is actually Joanna from Plymouth Township. We are actually, as far as the trying to figure out how to maybe accommodate summer camp and pass holders, we've actually talked about holding our summer camp out at different locations, different parks that have bathroom facilities, pavilions, instead of really offering any camps here in our building. So summer would definitely look different, but if the governor says we're only allowed to have 100 people in our building, we would like to try to accommodate pass holders and still give summer camp something. It's going to look very different, but it would be something. So that's kind of our initial thought out here in Plymouth.
Great.
What would you do if it rained?
Well, yep, that definitely came up. So if it's, a light summer rain, we can go under the pavilion. I'm assuming that there's going to be a definite limit on the number of kids that we're going to allow. Kind of in my head, each location has had 20 kids, 2, maybe 3 staff. But if it's a really bad rain and we cancel camp, we would just issue a refund for the day.
Since you're talking about that, I'm going to plug the 1 o'clock roundtable that we have later today on outdoor summer camps, because this topic specifically developed into that roundtable that we have at 1 with outdoor summer camps because of facilities maybe not being able to open, and it will address issues like weather and stuff like that. So if you want me to, I can put the information for that roundtable in the chat box for everyone with the passwords in case you're interested in attending that as well.
So I just have another topic as well. I know that I was talking to another director who had worked prior at a YMCA or for the YMCA. They are operating for childcare, but for essential workers right now. They pretty much have a policy on taking temperatures for anyone that enters the building. Does anyone have a plan on that? Do you think that you know, you would do something like that?
We're planning to do that for staff. I don't know about whether or not we're going to be doing that for members as well.
And where are you from?
Oh, sorry, Peters Township.
That's okay. Thank you.
For Upper St. Clair, we did purchase them, but we are waiting to see what the state guidance is and even what our legal recourse would be to be able to deny somebody from a facility based on their temperature. So there's some things we were still looking at, but we did buy them to prepare.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that, you know, Nikki and I did talk about as well. And who would be responsible for taking those temperatures?
Right. You can't just have any staff member doing it.
Right.
That's the problem.
Is there a nurse on staff?
Probably someone for your fire department, EMT maybe come over. That's what I was thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
But then now I'm taking them away from the fire department, so.
And there's a good point in the chat box that Jennifer makes about actually being able to secure supplies such as thermometers and sanitizers. Mm-hmm. I know that people are having a hard time getting most supplies in general. Even some doctors' offices haven't been able to get the little masks, not the N95s, but just the little tiny masks that go behind your ears. So would we even be able to get some of the supplies that we would need to operate? And Brian recommended, can we secure school nurses for in the summer to work to do those tests?
Yeah, I mean, that's a thought for school nurses.
Question is what the cost is going to be for everybody after you've been shut down for a month and a half or 2 months.
One question as well is, how does HIPAA play into that? So that would be a question. I don't know how that works. And I think that's a question we've had from a handful of people for the DOH representative is, you know, some people might question, well, why are you doing this? Because we know that there's been protesters and some differing thoughts on that, but will they have an issue with that and where it comes into how does HIPAA play into it?
Nikki, I have a question too for some people. You know, we've furloughed every department person with the exception of me and 2 other individuals, and we have a huge part-time staff base, a couple hundred. So, you know, have other facilities furloughed their staff? I mean, a lot of ours have went on to unemployment at this point, and they've been battling the unemployment system. So I wondered if anybody else had any plans. Obviously, this is all very fluid and changing, but on callbacks and what their plan is in terms of bringing staff back, reorganizing positions, things of that nature.
We've actually furloughed a number of our part-time and full-time staff as well. There's only a couple of us left working. We plan on hopefully bringing at least some of the full-time staff back once the non-essential business restrictions are lifted. We're not waiting for the green phase for the rec center reopening to get them back up and running so that we can plan for the future of when we are able to do those other things. So.
Yeah, Dan Russell here in Upper Merion, Southeastern PA. Last week, we temporarily laid off all of our part-time staff, folks that were directly related to the operations of the community center. So like our front desk folks, our gym attendants, our child watch people. Our board was committed to continue paying everyone, and they are going to continue paying them through this week, but effective the first week in May, it's going to be a temporary layoff. Obviously, when we open back up, they're needed to operate the center, so they're all going to come back. As far as our full-time staff, none of the full-time staff have been affected. They're currently working from home. A few of them are going into the office a couple times a week. I'm still going into the office a couple times a week. We've shared nothing but horrible news so far as the community centers go, but one of the good things that we've been able to do in Upper Merion is we've only been open a few years, and we've had the opportunity for our maintenance staff to do a lot of work in the center the last couple weeks that we wouldn't normally have an opportunity to do when the center is open. or it would take a lot longer, such as, repainting of all the walls and refinishing floors and things like that. So that's one of the good things that we're able to do, is we're able to catch up on a lot of our maintenance items that have been on our maintenance foreman list for several months.
Hi, it's Bob Lubinsky. I'm with the Mount Lebanon Rec Center. We're kind of in the same boat. We furloughed a lot of our full and part-time employees, but I'm maybe in a unique situation because we have an ice rink and we have a swimming pool as well. And we're kind of in limbo with what we're doing. The rink's been closed since March 15th, and we're trying to decide whether we're going to have a swim season or not. But we've used the time with our maintenance staff that we have on to, again, attack projects that we don't have the time to do on when we're in normal operation. So it's been a little bit of a help, but it's just, we're kind of in limbo waiting to see what's going to happen with the swimming pools.
The chat box has some similar conversation that people are, in East Hanover, they're a little too small to lay off anyone, so they're catching up on filing and helping with other work, and they're getting creative with some reduced hours. Thank you for, Jennifer had mentioned the CDC guidelines for opening camp, and while it's just a draft, it seems like taking temperatures will be mandatory, and then Tyler was able to share that draft. So that website is located in the chat box. As a reminder, we will send out the chat box and recording at the event today. It will probably come out on Friday. So if you don't have time to write down the link or copy it now, it will come out within the next day or two. So thank you for sharing those.
I just, so as far as furloughing our employees, we actually just received word yesterday that there will be an extension. Our council approved an extension. So my staff will be getting paid through May 15th, which is great. And then after that, if we do not return to work, then they will be furloughed. They're also looking to kind of repurpose community center staff. So depending on if the borough's open, and let's say, for instance, our front desk receptionist, she has 2 children. So if she's not able to return to work because childcare won't be provided and she doesn't have another option, we could have a community center staff person become, take over some hours for the borough front desk receptionist. So they're looking at that. We're also looking at the possibility for when our parks do reopen, to kind of have a park attendant at some of our larger parks. So we have a stadium and that has a walking track, and we'll have somebody stationed up there, and most likely that'll be a community center member where they'll hand out pamphlets on social distancing, things of that nature. So that's been talked about.
Hi all, I'm Gwen Antrobala with Upper Merion Township, and for those of you with fitness centers in your community center, or even pickleball courts, whatever it might be that we have you all considered, one of the things we've thrown around is staggering arrival times? And I know it's difficult for pass holders because they've paid a particular amount of money and they want access when they want access. But doing almost like a class scheduling where so many people based on the guidelines can come in at 8 a.m. They stay for 45 minutes. They all have to leave. We do a cleaning of the machines and whatnot they use. And the next group comes in at 9:15 a.m. or whatever it is. Are those any thoughts that are kind of being tossed about?
Hey, this is Tyler from Upper St. Clair again. We do have a fitness operation here. We are looking at staggering our equipment into like our lobby area. We're very fortunate that we have a fairly large, vestibule. where we might be able to put some equipment. And we're thinking that the thing we would open first is our fitness area. That realistically would be one of the first things we could open. We have looked into staggered start times. Our concern with that is that if you stagger a start time, the groupings in which you do it will cause people to all come at a certain time and leave at a certain time. So we would just, in the scheduling software, if that could become so complicated, you could have people that book but don't come, and then, you know, that spot could have been used for somebody else. So we're trying. We've looked at staggered start times, but we're not sold on that yet. Particularly, like, we started to look at Lifetime Fitness and a couple people in our areas and what they're doing, and it doesn't look like they're doing that either. So we would worry, because that is a source of revenue for us, an important source of revenue. So we don't want to lose those people out to other facilities either. So we don't have a great answer, but we have looked at staggered start times.
Yeah, so Montgomery Township, we're also looking at staggering fitness equipment, make sure that we're following social distancing procedures as laid out by the state or federal government. Going to, and again, like Tyler said, fitness will be kind of the first part that we're going to open up most likely. As far as pickleball, we're considering some sort of scheduling system. We don't know what it is yet, but it's going to be one-on-one, definitely not partner play.
Yeah, the pickleball is a difficult, I mean, basketball is kind of simple. If social distancing is in effect, basketball isn't going to happen and those kinds of things. But pickleball for us, as I'm sure for everyone, has become so incredibly popular. I mean, we offer it 7 days a week, 3, 4, 5 hours a day, and we could have, you know, 30 to 40 people waiting to play. So having to do alternating courts and, you know, only singles is it's just so daunting, all of these choices or decisions that have to be made.
We have a question in the chat box. Any info or contacts for front desk reception area plexiglass or sneeze guard protection? Has anyone installed or ordered them using Lowe's, Home Depot, or a local company?
Yeah, got it. Yeah, we have one here actually. We're grabbing it real quick.
Our assistant township managers working on ordering through Staples, so we have an account through them.
Tyler mentioned that Granger has some options.
WB Mason also has some options for the plastic guards.
Greg mentioned that a big concern is able to get proper cleaning supplies and disinfectants after a loss of their revenue. How are they going to put extra staff on for cleaning of facilities?
Sorry, was that a staffing question? Okay.
Yeah, I guess after many people have not brought in most of their revenue. So if you have to put on extra staff to clean your facilities, how are you doing that? How are you making the case for it? Stuff like that.
Yeah, we're not sure yet. First step is bringing back our maintenance director.
I mean, literally, the CDC guideline says once somebody touches something, it's infected. So you can wipe it down, somebody touches it, like water fountain, whatever, it's infected. Handle to a sink. Doesn't matter what it is. I've thought about like all the dumbbells in our weight room. Nobody wipes, anybody that lifts weights knows you don't wipe the handles down on bars and dumbbells, but now you're gonna have to. And after each person uses them, somebody's gonna have to be there to wipe them down.
Well, we're planning to work with our instructors to try and have them encourage people to do what they need to do. But that was one of the questions that I had sent to Nikki for the Department of Health. Like, is there some wording that we should be including in our disclaimers now to try and protect us against our liability for people not doing what they should do? I don't know the answer to that.
I've been at a physical therapy office lately, and so obviously people are touching weights and bands and other fitness equipment and stuff like that. And they actually have signage up that asks we're not even participants, I guess we're patients, to wipe all the equipment down once we're done using it. So they do it, but they also put it out there for us to clean before and after every time we use it. So I have seen almost every other person who's at the facility cleaning before and after use. So I don't know if that would be helpful. Obviously, we know not everyone's going to do it. Some people just don't care. But that would be an extra step that I saw at the facility I've been going to that has been useful. It's a spray bottle. It has the wipes available in some areas, and it's been weights and bands, and there's treadmills and arm bikes and stuff like that. So I've seen people actually cleaning the equipment after use and some before use. So it's been interesting.
You know, Nikki, just to touch on Greg's point, I think he hit the nail on the head. Is there's so much additional cleaning and the question of revenue. We haven't charged members in April. We're not going to charge them again in May. I mean, that's a couple $100,000 we're losing just by doing that. You know, these are huge. And then the cost, I mean, there are companies that are offering to come in with ionizers and spray, you know, everything down. And that's a one surface. I mean, that's only to clean essentially once, and they're charging out the wazoo. I don't know if anybody else has seen some price quotes on that, but it's pretty dauntingly scary on how much they're charging. It's borderline fraud. But the other thing that I was thinking about too is there has to be at some point a question of personal responsibility. And, you know, you are entering a facility in a gym kind of with an assumed risk that, you know, this virus is airborne. So, you know, we will do our best here to, you know, keep surfaces wiped down, adhere to the physical distancing guidelines. But at the end of the day, our members are going to have to be responsible citizens and wipe down their equipment.
Nikki, when I was on with the aquatics the other day, the biggest question that came out of that was, is it personal responsibility or the facility's responsibility for liability? Nobody had that answer. We didn't have the lawyers.
Yeah. And I think that's, you know, obviously this is something that we can all ask. I don't know if there's a good question because this is something we've never experienced before. I think we can say personal liability all we want, but we all know that people are so happy. So someone's always going to come back at us. And very interesting, Greg said that he's from out of Pennsylvania, but he said several places in Michigan are not opening back their locker rooms at all.
So that was one of my topics as well. I know that I was speaking with another director around here, and they are not planning on opening their locker rooms either. Now we have our locker rooms, and then we have other bathrooms that are one person, you know, a ladies' room and a men's room with one toilet sink, and that would be okay for our summer camp, and they would go in and clean after each child is what I'm assuming. But as far as locker rooms, we haven't made that decision yet. But it'll depend on if we open up for members or day pass holders.
The other topic I wanted to mention was I was wondering and curious if anybody has developed any sort of mitigation plan in the event there's an infection or, you know, an uptick of infections from folks using the facility or even at the facility.
Jane just happened to ask a similar question. What happens if we open back up and find out one person may have been exposed? So very similar to what Dan just asked, is there an emergency action plan? What happens when or if? Or I should say if or when. No one. Some thoughts in the chat box is close and do a deep clean and open 24 hours later. Tyler mentioned that the state has released some interesting guidance in regard to closures and the notification procedures. I'll try to find that information and include it in the chat box, text in the email when we send that out.
Well, going on Dan's question, one of the things that we've discussed as a staff is, with temperature taken, if somebody's positive, all of those kind of things, it kind of go back to if you have a camp or in school and a child has lice, they notify everybody immediately that this has happened. So are those the kinds of things that we'll have to follow? So you have to notify the health department getting involved, especially with something of this magnitude. Would they then tell us, obviously a deep clean has to be done, but would they then give us some guidelines on what has to happen moving forward, just looking at some of the businesses that we've seen in the news where those things have happened?
Amy from the country asked a good question. How is it determined when someone is exposed or where someone is exposed to the virus?
That was a big thing that my boss had too. Like, how can they prove where they got it from? Were they at the supermarket? Did they go to the bank? Did they go to the pharmacy?
Isn't that where they're contact tracing, that they're all trying to hire more contact tracers come in once you've been exposed or once you've been determined positive, then they are trying to figure out where you've been, with whom you've been in contact. And that's part of some of the states hiring thousands of contact tracers.
Yeah, I think that's what they're working on.
They'll hire a lot of people.
Yeah.
Just looking over the chat box to see if we've missed anything. Are there any questions that anyone else has while we're checking the chat box? You can put it in the chat box, or you can just unmute yourself and let us know.
Hey, Nikki, has anybody looked, this question's for the group, has anybody looked at some virtual options for revenue, or are any virtual options you're offering primarily looking just to provide content and value to your current membership, even though they're not really paying us at this point?
We're in discussion about starting a YouTube channel with some, as part of our programming and doing even just a donation based to get the information. But the other thing that we're doing for free is with Simplex Health, our fitness partner. They have given us, actually they made some videos in our center in the week between the 13th when we closed and the next week when we were told not to be in the center anymore when the township closed. They did some fitness videos that they've put out for us that we're able to share on our Facebook page. And they also offer a live program once or twice a day, depending on the day, Monday through Friday, that we're able to share with our pass holders. The other thing they did, they have it's called Wexer. I'm technologically not, I don't know exactly what it is, but it is a password generated that we were able to send to our pass holders, and they can access videos on demand for kids, seniors, adaptive, any kind of fitness that they might be interested in utilizing. So at least it's something that we are able to offer to both our pass holders at a better level with all of the options, and then to our Facebook followers with some fitness component every day.
Great. Jennifer mentioned that they just started offering low-cost options, voiceover training, some non-certification Red Cross courses. They're low registration, but it's something, and all exercise, art, and kids programs are still free. Amy from Makunji, they have hundreds of volunteers who give their time during events and shows. Has a policy for volunteers. Is there a policy for volunteers being involved right now? Has anyone created a volunteer policy regarding COVID? I think we're still trying to get through with staff, maybe.
Amy, do you mean in terms of like staff providing virtual content? Because that's an interesting take we haven't looked at here. Or volunteers, I mean.
Amy, for some reason, we cannot hear you. She's typing that in, but I did notice in Lower Paxton, they're starting a Zoom program schedule that will be fee-based. So you will need to pay a fee to receive the codes. And virtual content in Middletown has been free and not well attended. I think a lot of there's so much virtual everywhere that I think sometimes people have, the saturation level is just so much that people can go everywhere. Tyler, I think Amy's responding to you now, so I'll keep an eye on the chat box for that. Other questions? Feel free to unmute yourself and ask the group. There's a lot of people we haven't heard from. We would love to hear from you. Quiet group.
For those, and who you just mentioned, I think it was Rachel, Nikki, that you mentioned starting a Zoom program where they'll have to receive the codes to how are they going to stop people from sharing the code?
And just to follow up on that, also, are you paying your instructors?
I have to.
We're going to have our instructors in charge of allowing them in. So they probably, with Zoom, you can do a wait room, so they'll be letting them in on an individual basis.
Yep, yep.
And yes, they're paying their instructors, and that's why they have a fee.
I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Now we can. Yep.
Now we can. Okay. Sorry, a little technical difficulty here, but one of the other things we're doing with our Silver Sneakers and insurance memberships, that we were told that if they're working out like through our Facebook and we can capture their feedback, then we can submit that for payment. And so each week we're sending a survey out to our members saying, let us know if you worked out a half hour during which days, and then we're submitting that to our insurance, as well as another way to try to get some fees reimbursed here.
have another topic, I guess. My question for you is, if you're allowing pass holders, no day passes, just your pass holders, are you restricting any particular groups? If your pass holders, 65 plus, or if your pass holder brings in their child, does anybody have any thoughts on that? I mean, if we're still in these phases and the governor's saying, that the older population, should still continue social distancing, which they have because they're vulnerable. Are you enforcing that?
Hey, Lauren, it's Tyler. I don't think we can unless the state, provides some sort of fixed rule, because, we can't, to me, I completely agree with you. We have a lot of seniors here, and some are very high risk, but we can't tell them or discriminate and say that, of this age, you can't come in. And we also have staff that are of that age. So, how could I have a staff person on my membership team to tell that person, when they might be older than them, that they can't actually come in? It just doesn't seem on our space very feasible unless the state guidances tell us otherwise.
I agree. I'm just, kind of playing devil's advocate and seeing what, Nikki and I definitely discussed that, and how can you do that, and is it legal? And I just saw Erica from Norristown Recreation put in the chat box. And I like this thought, is to do what grocery stores are doing and have special times for special populations.
I agree with you, Tyler. The one thing that we have done that we do have control over is, we've canceled some of our large special events for the summer because we don't believe that we'll be permitted to have that large of social gatherings at the times that they were scheduled, but we have canceled all of our summer senior events, even the smaller ones, just to try and not put that risk or put that group at risk. So
yeah, Michelle, we have too. Our special events with seniors, we've canceled that.
There's another really good question in the chat box from Kate. She said that their insurance company won't let them do virtual programs because due to liability, if someone gets hurt at home, they could file a claim against them because the instructor was not present to correct them. Has anyone else had that come down from their insurance company? Has anyone had that concern? Have you not asked your insurance companies? How are you feeling about that?
Hey, this is Rochelle from Collier. We're doing a virtual program. It's 100K by the end of May. Basically, they just have to exercise and submit their miles each day. We just had them fill out a waiver like we would if they were normally doing just a 5K with us. Our solicitor didn't have any problem with that as long as they signed those waivers, and we did it all online.
One of the things that came up with waivers with virtual programming, actually, in some of the other groups that I've been in, have been safety in, internet use programming for children. A lot of talk around the country is camps being virtual a couple of hours a day and how they're going to manage that. And one of the big things is teaching the instructor about the safety of the internet and how to bring that to the children, and what the waiver and the liability form and the information for the parents has to say in order for the children to participate in those classes.
They brought that up in the camp meeting, actually, about virtual camps, and My feeling is every kid's been online doing their homework for the past 2 months and will continue to do that. I don't know how many children are going to sign up for a virtual camp on top of that, or at least participate. You might get a sign up, but are they going to participate every day? The other thing they brought up was that it's an essential. Mom and dad are going to want to go back to work at some point, camps. they're going to have to go back to work, not even going to want to. So those were just things they brought up.
Right. It's a hard choice for the parents. We've had a couple of parents who've canceled camp already, said they just don't feel comfortable, you know, sending their kids. If they have that option of not working or they're nervous, people mainly, it seems to me, and what I've been on other calls with, roundtables with, it's the camps that are really for profit, not that we don't want a profit, but you know, really for profit, that are able to switch this on in a really monetized manner. But what are our options if we can't open? How do we make sure? And you're right, people, you know, kids have been on the internet now for, I mean, if they're 30 years old, young adults, they've been on the internet their whole life.
Right.
So the kids now have certainly been on the internet, but they've also always participated in basketball by their own, you know, on their own also. How do we protect ourselves while protecting them, but just mitigating our liability?
Once again, the liability, does it fall on the person or does it fall on the facility?
Chicken egg.
There's no answer for that. Like I said, I even asked our solicitor for the town. But my other question was, how'd the lady get $1 million? She didn't know the coffee was hot.
Exactly. Exactly. It's crazy.
But she said in court. So that's what we're dealing with. We don't, it's an unknown factor.
Right.
I just don't want to add anything more to a parent to feel like they have to make sure is getting completed with a child after all of this. I mean, it's been hard enough. I mean, I don't know if you've seen my kid bouncing around behind me, but it's been hard enough. He's supposed to be doing his schoolwork. But to keep them on task right now and to work has been difficult enough that to keep them accountable to another virtual program of some kind. And I don't know if you saw, but I asked my son quick, how would you feel about a virtual camp? And he's just like, please no, because it just at this point, would it feel like schoolwork to them?
You know, I think our experience as recreators and as real life, you know, is just so different. Some of the things that are coming out from across the country from different communities, and maybe they're not our community, so it wouldn't work. But there's a percentage of the population that is looking for this. The kids are looking for a fun interaction with their friends, the same way we do maybe, you know, happy hour with our friends, Zoom happy hour with our friends. It's different than school in that that's a time for them to, if the instructor is any good, and it's a different instructing on an internet than it is in real life, they're having some good results with it. I just think it's something we're so unused to. It's difficult to get it together in our mind and understand how it can be possibly effective. It's just a different way of looking at it.
There's another liability question in the chat box, which is interesting. Has anyone thought of requiring waivers for members when they come in your community center, stating the fact that they understand the organization cannot guarantee the spread of the virus?
We did that right before we shut down, actually. We shut down on a Sunday. the 15th, I want to say it was. And that Friday, we came out with liability forms. And we also, that were written up by our solicitor, we also did not allow anyone under the age of 18 in for that weekend because of the liability forms. And it was members only, no daily passes, because you don't, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We were trying to limit.
If you have your waiver and anyone wants to share them, you can put them in the chat box or you can email me. I'll put my email in the chat box and then we can share it with the because if that's something that people want to use in their facilities and they haven't already, always having that text available that they can share with their solicitors would be great.
I think that the waiver idea would be good if camps are continuing to, for the parents to sign off on as well.
Mm-hmm.
We are definitely.
I would appreciate that for sure.
It's funny, I've only had two people can't. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say it. You know, we also have to consider what the market's going to look like. I don't know what's the case in, you know, the Southeast, but I know here in the South Hills and Southwestern PA, we had a lot, you know, our fitness classes, for example, we had private yoga studios that have sprouted up, and we've had cycle studios, and, you know, we're reading articles and we're looking at the market. I mean, those mom and pop shops, many of them will not survive this. So the same thing with some of your, you know, our YMCA locally, they have dozens and dozens of camps. They were already financially struggling, and they've had to lay off 95% of their staff, and they don't know who they're going to call back. So the demand for camp and all these programs that we offer at our community and recreation center, the private market in the nonprofit market that was surrounding some of these services for a little bit will not be operational, at least right away. So, you know, we've looked at the virtual option, but we are also preparing for the demand to potentially be high because there's a limited market. And how are we going to address that and keep all of our members safe while doing that? And I think these are all very hard questions that none of us really have the answer to, but just something we've had to look at, and I'm sure everybody else is too.
Good point.
We only have a few minutes left, so I'm just gonna, another question from the chat box, Karen. Is anyone considering allowing only those 18 and over in their facility when they open back up? In Plymouth, I think it's Plymouth, they're considering only opening up to adults and having outside camps only.
We're only going to open for above 18. I know that already. And our camp, we usually take 80 children. I already have 30 children signed up. I think we're only going to take 40. I've had two people, the crazy part is I've had two people call for refunds for our camp, and I've had 12 calls to sign up for camp.
Wow.
Parents need a place for those kids to go, I'm sure.
I'm sure that's what it is. I also, right before I got on, I wanted to tell you guys, I just got an email, I haven't had a chance to read it, from Williamsport Little League about them reopening the Little League season. So I'm gonna look at that when I get off this call and see what they said.
I've also had a lot of our local leagues contact us too about if there was a chance for them to still have some sort of season. I didn't know if anybody had any input on that.
EPYSA for Eastern Pennsylvania Youth Soccer, they canceled the spring season. So I know that happened, and our club's all refunded. Like I said, I just got this thing that they're going to try to open Little League. So.
If they do, if Little League reopens, are you allowing them to use your field?
That's going to be a whole discussion with the solicitor and the administrator, and I really highly am doubting it. I'm going to tell you right now, because You cannot tell me social distancing between a catcher and a batter even. You're within feet. You can reach out and touch the batter. I was a catcher. So, and the umpire's breathing right over your shoulder.
The kids sitting in the dugout,
Touching the dugout. Like the fence, the bench. I did read over one thing quick. They're telling all children to bring their own equipment. Helmets, bats. And for the parents to wipe it down every night when they leave. That's the only thing that I read about.
Then you have the parents sitting in the stands with all the extra kids
Must
on top of it.
remove all your stands.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
We
Oh my
aren't
goodness.
allowing any of our youth sports to operate until we have the guidance from the state allowing us to have that kind of programs within our department.
Right.
That's what I'm telling them too.
Yeah, in Upper Marion, we shut down all of our youth leagues too. They use all of our facilities. And I head coach a travel baseball team in Springford. Springford canceled their spring baseball season. And we're Cal Ripken, but with Little League reopening, if that's true or not, I can't imagine there's going to be teams and parents and coaches that are going to want to travel across the state for these tournaments and things. I just can't wrap my head around that.
One thing we're experiencing is that May is typically tryout time for the amateur hockey. And every time the governor puts a new date out there, we get calls from the association. Oh, are we going to be open? Are we going to be doing this? And it's like, folks, you're not going to be on that ice anytime soon, especially in hockey, because you can never enforce social distancing. So, and they have probably 300 or 400 kids that are going to go through the tryout process. And there's just no way that's going to happen. If we end up taking the ice down, we're going to be down till August. Because it's just going to be a yo-yo effect. They'll set a date, May 15th, and then on May 10th, they're going to tell you that that's not good. Or they'll say June 1st, and then on May 20th, they'll say, well, that's not good. And we're going to be in a position where we're just going to have to set a date when we think we could reopen and then reevaluate it on a monthly basis before that. But if we told them they could come in tomorrow and try out, they'd be here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all of my leagues, local leagues that use our facilities would be on them right now. No matter how small, from like T-ball up, they would all be out there right now.
But I have a question for you guys. So in talking about the use of these fields by these organizations, our groups have been told that they can't use them. But what are you guys doing as far as enforcement? Like I came to the park one day to walk my dog, and I came across the high school baseball team in uniform on the baseball field. How would you guys address that?
Wow.
Just curious.
We have our police patrolling the areas.
Us too.
Also, all of our facilities are used by permit only, so we're not approving any permits. And the township has ordinances against using facilities without, permits. So that's how the police are able to enforce it, and they are patrolling more.
See, and our police are, they're supposed to be enforcing, but they aren't necessarily enthused about doing that. So how do you get them? Like I contacted one of our police officers, and I was told to call 911. So if I'm in the park and I see something, I have to call 911. And I said, well, I don't want to call 911 every time I go to the park to walk my dog. So.
Yeah, I could see how it would be, difficult for a large municipality. For a place like Upper Marion, we're very close knit with our departments. So, we have a tremendous relationship with our police department, and that's just the way they operate. I guess all the departments operate a little differently.
Ours is the state police, and they are patrolling more frequently. We actually had people break into the to play pickleball. They actually cut our chains. An elderly group cut our chains to go play pickleball. So they had to have the state police called on them for breaking and entering.
Pretty diehard.
It was pretty interesting. And the guy literally had to come up, and all he had to say was governor's orders, and they finally got off. But I couldn't believe that they gave an officer a hard time. But field use, though, my fields are locked up, and I haven't seen anybody using those except for maybe like a dad and one son or two kids, you know what I mean? Nothing like a whole team or league in there.
Yeah, our fields are open. Our regular grass fields are open, and we haven't had a problem with crowding or overuse on any of them, except for our synthetic turf field, which we have mobs of people on regularly. So we have locked it up, marked it closed, advertised it. And what field is always being mobbed by people when I go to the park? That one, the one that's locked and closed.
I don't want to cut this conversation short, but we are at the 1 hour mark, and I want to respect people's time. A few things. One, we can do a community center roundtable again if people want that. If you kind of shake your head, and I can schedule it in about another week and a half. That's what we've been typically doing, is about 10 to 12 days. Yes, I see some stuff coming through in the chat box. If you haven't given me your name and email address, please do that in the chat box. I will make sure you get the recording and the chat and a couple links and documents that I believe people are going to send my way. It takes me a couple days to get them processed, mainly because there's so much great feedback in the chat, and sometimes we have issues with our internet. So I'm trying to get those out. For those who were on the Summer Camp and Aquatics roundtables last week, those are going out today. And finally, we have a webinar with DOH scheduled for next Friday. The registration for that will open this afternoon. We will be limited to 100 people, but we will be recording it. If you have questions for the DOH representative, please email them to me by 3 o'clock today. I have to compile them and get them to the DOH representative tomorrow morning. Most importantly, thank you so much for everything you do for your communities and for Parks and Recreation in general. We appreciate your feedback and your participation in our roundtable, so thank you.
Thanks, Nikki.
Thanks, everyone.
And thank you, Lauren, for such great topics today.
Thank you.
This roundtable, we really appreciate it.